Hey, True Believers, England Teen here, and I'm going to be doing reviews of the individual stories within the winter special. And it's a winter special, not a Christmas or a holiday special, but I'm wondering how many of these stories will actually deal with Christmas, or is it just going to be a snowy scene throughout the biz here? So, in the description below is a link to other videos as well, so make sure you're checking those out. I hope you enjoy this. There's 10 stories. So we're going to be getting 10 little itty bitty videos of each one as just a little review of them to tell you if this book is good enough to go out and hunt down and check it out for this Christmas season. The wraparound, the thing that sets up all the stories, we have Rip Hunter, his time bubble crashes in the future. He's met with some cannibals, and in order to save his own life, he's like, hey, I got some great stories about Superman, Batman, and the other heroes of the DCU, and they survived apocalypses without having to eat people, so listen to these stories, and the kids go, all right, sure, we'll listen to your stories and then decide if we want to eat you. The first official story in the DC Comics Nuclear Winter Special is a Batman Ra's al Ghul, or at least Batman 666. So basically we're getting Damian Wayne versus Ra's al Ghul here. Both of them immortal, both of them hacking and slashing at each other, trying to kill the unkillable, and both blaming each other for the state of the nuclear winter, the state of the world as it is, the apocalypse. And it's a pretty decent story. I think it's a good start. And you do have a great line from Ra's al Ghul, you'll never be Batman. And I guess that'll hit home if you're Damian and you have Damian's ego and everything. Overall, not a bad way to begin things. Steve Orlando and Brad Walker bring to us Memory Hearth. And this is more of a Martian Manhunter story, even though Superman 1,000,000 seems to stand front and center. And I got to tell you, I am okay with Brad Walker kind of being the Martian Manhunter artist. There's sort of a, I don't know, an otherworldly yet good kind of quality to his art. Now, this deals mostly with the Martian Manhunter's holiday, so it's not exactly Christmas, but to tell you the truth, it is a really touching story, and I enjoyed it quite a bit. As a matter of fact, I could say I enjoyed this one just a bit better. By that, I mean a lot better than the Batman story. And The Flash, Once and Future. I got to tell you, these stories just keep getting better, and I hope the trend continues. This one's written by Jeff Loveness and Christian Deuce. Excuse me. I understand it's basically a whole bunch of the major villains attack all at once and end up causing the Speed Force to get sick. They're going to win. Flash does something, he's trapped in the Speed Force, never to return. It's kind of a downer, but it's a really good story, even though, didn't this happen in Crisis, Infinite Crisis, just saying, with all the villains attacking at once? I don't know. Anyway, we saw it, but it's still pretty good. I like this one. This one's the best so far. I said that before, didn't I? Well, this one's a little bit more than bleak. You got Aquaman and Where the Light Cannot Reach, written by Margaret Scott, drawn by Dexter Soy. It is absolutely post-apocalyptic. These two scientists come to find Aquaman to tell him that there was a substance at the bottom of the ocean that they found that eats radiation, and since the world has been irradiated to extinction levels, they could use it. And now Aquaman has to brave the monsters of the sea and how the radiation has affected them to go find it. It's a pretty intense story. Yeah, definitely not one of the Christmas spirit, definitely one of the post-apocalyptic spirit. Next up, we have a story that I don't think I'm supposed to tell you who's in it. It's written by Tom Taylor and I forgot the artist's name. I think it's Pew or something like that. And it's amazing to me because you've got a woman who is taking this child wanting to find the highest peak on Earth. It's a nuclear wasteland and in North America. And we find out, of course, at the end, that this is a Supergirl story, and the reason why she wants to reach the highest peak in North America is to see the sun and repower and be able to protect people more. It's a very powerful story written by Tom Taylor, who I guess if you don't give him enough rope to hang himself can actually write. Paul Dini and Jerry Ordway, two of my favorite comic book creators, on Last Christmas We Fight for Our Lives, and that's basically this. the nuclear family, a family of evil robots, are winding down. It's, of course, after the apocalypse, same as the entire book here, the winter apocalypse, and they are winding down. They want to capture Firestorm and use his energies to survive. Basically, this is a man trying to save his family, even though they're evil robots. So it is something to kind of understand the villain here, but still want the hero to prevail. It's a good story. It's not as good as some of the others here, but it definitely holds its own. And so far, you gotta say, this book is pretty damn good. Well, I think I kind of jinxed myself. This story isn't bad. It's by Phil Hester. It's commandy. And of course, if you're going to have a post-apocalyptic comic book, or you might as well include commandy, right? This isn't a Christmas story either. This is a Hanukkah story, as we have Commandy defending a bunch of animals, or a bunch of animal-human hybrids, and lasting the 8 days. So you do get that story. The problem is it's amazingly fine. This is the first one that's not good. It drops to mediocre. It's called Northern Lights. I wish I could say better things, but I'm glad I'm not saying worse overall. Okay, this one is brought to us by Cecil Castellucci and a name that I can't pronounce for the artist. And it's a story called 9 Lives. And it stars Catwoman. I wish I could say, wow, the story belies that kind of creativity, but unfortunately not. And this is one of those where she's not a good guy. She's a protagonist. I guess that's the modern day saying, because Catwoman, she's watching out for Holly's daughter, and they go about beating the crap out of and stealing medical supplies from people they don't think need it so they could give it to people who they think do. Well, okay, maybe the people they're stealing the medical supplies from actually believe and know somebody who needs it. It's really the worst of the bunch. And considering Commandy was and this one's bad, I am now in fear of the trajectory of this book. I mean, it was on a steady climb of some sort of excellence, and now it has fallen. Dave Wildghost, I may be saying that wrong, and Scott Collins brings us the the birds of Christmases past, future, and present. And this is a Green Arrow story. Actually, it's a Justice League story. It just focuses on the Green Arrow. And it is in the modern times of the setting of the comic with the nuclear apocalypse and all that kind of stuff, or winter apocalypse. And they are reminiscing, and by that I mean members of the Justice League, about modern day. And of course, Green Arrow's played off like an SJW here, which works for him because that's what he is, and he has been since the 70s. And yeah, he does kind of go, well, you guys are doing good, but you weren't doing it the way I would have done it. But what really gets me on this is it's mostly conversation. It's mostly just characters talking to each other. And even though they do have their differences, showing how much of a friend they are to each other. And I think that's what makes this probably the most Christmas of all of the stories. It's one of my favorites. I'm glad that the last story has kind of brought this book back to its quality. It really is good, and it shows that a writer who knows the voices of the characters can really make an impact with those characters. This is one of the better stories of the book. So how does the book work as a whole? Well, it does. It flows pretty well. Once again, there's only 2 stories that I really found not to be actively good. And even those weren't horrible. I think the worst of them, Catwoman, comes close to being really bad, but it's still readable at the very least. So overall, I can, in fact, recommend the Nuclear Winter Special. And just for poops and grins, here are the 10 stories from worst to best. Number 10 is the Rip Hunter, the wraparound story. It's kind of cheesy. There's some decent humor, but overall, yeah, not as good as the other ones. Number 10 is the very lazily titled 9 Lives starring Catwoman. Overall, it wasn't horrible, but man, we've seen this over and over again. Number 8 goes to the Commandy story, a decent Hanukkah story, but overall, once again, just a big old fight. Speaking of fights, at number 7 we have Warmth, which once again was just a 6-page fight, and I think there are some stronger stories that actually deal with the characters and the stories in this book. Number 6 is Superman 1 Million in Memory Hearth, which is basically a nice conversation between Superman 1 Million and Martian Manhunter. It's really effective. Number 5 is Aquaman and Where the Light Cannot Reach. This was a pretty dour story, but it is a nuclear winter special. The weird thing about it, of course, would have to be the fact that it was open-ended, which is kind of rare for one of these short story anthology books. At number 4, we have Green Arrow and the Birds of Christmas Past, Future, and Present. Past, Present, Future. Anywho, it is a really touching story about old friends reminiscing about the lives they've survived. Maybe it's because of my advancing years, but I kind of connected with this one. At number 3, we have Barry Allen at his best, Dead, and Once and Future. It's a story of sacrifice, which kind of works with the nuclear winter setting. Number 2, Firestorm and the Nuclear Family and Last Christmas. Basically, they both fight for their survival. And the number 1 story in the book, Last Daughters by Tom Taylor, somebody I have been just ripping into for his poor execution of Superboy in Superman Son of Kal-El. Yet here, with just a few pages, he writes an incredibly powerful story that makes you really root for Supergirl to make it to where she needs to go. There you go. That's my opinion. What is yours? Let me know in the comments below. Also, don't forget to do all the things. Click like, share, subscribe.
And we are trying to make a living.
Want you to go on over to Ko-Fi, drop $1 in the till. Help us keep the lights on. Help us keep making videos for you. This is the way we're trying to make a living. Like, thank everybody who's already done that to everyone. All the true believers. Thank you very, very much for watching.
Very much.